The Leica SL3 has a completely redesigned menu. In this video, I'm gonna show you how I set up my SL3 for video. The Leica SL3 got a big update on its video features, comparing it to the Leica SL2. And I wanna go through the menu and through the setups of my SL3 now, how I have set it up as a video camera. Before I do that, let me tell you that I work with user profiles. There are 6 different user profiles you can define and save on your SL3 camera. These settings are combining photo and video settings. So the moment I save a preset to the camera, it saves all the settings that are currently set for photo and for video. So I have in my basic setting, my setting number 1, I have my photo settings and my video settings. I saved it when I was on photo, because I use it more as a photo camera. So to access my video settings, I have to activate this first profile, and then I have to do one step. I need to go into video, and then I have all my video settings. Before I go through the menu with you, I want to show you how I set up my dials and my function buttons for video. My left dial here, the new dial that the Leica SL3 got, the SL2 doesn't have that dial, I have set it to ISO. So I can turn here and it changes ISO, or as I says here, the ASA. I'm going to talk about that later, why this is the case. On the right side, on the thumb wheel, I have set the aperture, and I have also set the aperture on the front wheel here, on the big one on the right side. Why did I do that? Because I don't want to mess up the shutter speed. I have set the camera to Cine mode. We're going to see that in the menu. And this enables basically 2 things. This enables that the ISO is now shown as ASA, and the shutter speed is now shown in degrees. I want to set the shutter to 180 degrees. To not accidentally change that, I have not applied the shutter to one of the wheels. If I want to change the shutter, I need to go into the control center, and then I can change the shutter here manually, like this, but usually you want it to be at 180 degrees. You have 2 function buttons here up front. The upper one I have assigned to magnification. It is a digital zoom, so you can check focus. And the lower one will switch between video and photo mode. Then I have the joystick. The joystick also activates focus. The same if I would press the shutter release button, and the button next to the joystick switches between the LCD, the EVF, or automatic. Now it's in the EVF. Now we have only the LCD, and now it's on auto. And now it's both turned off. The upper buttons here, on the right button, I have assigned white balance. On the left button, I have assigned the focus mode. So if I press up here, I can toggle the white balance. If I press the left button, I can toggle the focus mode. You press menu once, you come to the newly designed control center. You press menu twice, and you are in the classical menu. Here I have to say that you have, of course, 2 different menus for photo and video. The underlining or the buttons here are in yellow in video mode. When you go to photo mode, the same, it's in red. So you can immediately see in which mode you are, and you're not messing around in the wrong mode. That could happen sometimes in the SL2. I hope it's not going to happen in the SL3. I think that helps a lot. You can customize those 2 rows. I have focus modes. Second is the AF mode. I can quickly access them. Exposure metering. I have here the stabilization. I have turned it on. Then I have video profiles. I'm going to come to that later. I have my user profiles. This is the user profile 1 now. It has a little star because I changed something. And what did I change? I switched from photo to video. If I would now choose my first setup, which is called handheld, I'm going to come to that later, I now switched into photo mode because it was like this when I saved the profile, and when you activate a profile, it goes to this setting you have the moment you save it. So to change it into video, I have those buttons here up front. The lower one will now switch into video mode. And again, when I'm in video mode and I press the lower one here, it jumps back into photo mode. It starts with focusing. You have your autofocus modes. I have chosen as a starting point the IAF, the most intelligent autofocus. You can, of course, switch to the other ones. I have not had time to test the video functions of the camera. I will do that in depth. It's probably going to take a while until I will make a dedicated video on the video functions of the SL3, but I have a plan to do that. Second menu is the AF mode. I'm here on multi-field. Of course, you can go down to eye phase and body detection. Then we have focus settings, which I didn't touch at all. Then you have exposure metering. I like to work in multi-field. But let me say that, of course, I am in the exposure mode manual. So this only shows me down here in the scale if I'm underexposed or overexposed based on multi-field measuring. Now I'm of course underexposed because I have the lens cap on. If I take the lens cap off, it's going to switch into overexposure. Then we have ASA settings. This is basically the same like ISO settings, but it's in ASA like when we used to do film. The EV increments are blacked out. This probably has to do with the lens. Then we come to video profiles. This is the probably most innovative new point in this menu, and I'm going to show you why. You have now 5 profiles you can set up for video codecs. This basically gives you a chance to set up profiles within profiles. And the thing that you sometimes have to change when doing video, not as much as when you're doing photo, because in photo you only have DNG or JPEG. In video, you much more often change your video codecs, the size, or the gamma settings. So now with the possibility to set up 5 different video profiles, it will help you to switch much faster. And I'm pretty sure 5 profiles are more than enough. So you activate profile 1, and then the setting menu opens. You go into settings, and here you have this new designed menu. On the left upper side, you can choose your format. Then you can choose your resolution. Then you can choose your frame rate. Then you can choose your codec, the compression. Then you can choose your color depth, the bitrate, your gamma. You can use full frame or cropped sensor. You can choose your sound codec. And here you can choose on which mediums you're going to record. I have set up only 4 profiles. I have my Cinema 4K in 2997 frames per second. This is basically what I use for YouTube. Then I have the same for 8K. I have the full HD 60 frames per second for slow motion in ProRes and the 4K 60 frames per second profile. When you use parameters that are not working together, it blocks off or changes automatically some things. So for example, if I now say I want to do an MOV, I want 4K resolution, and I want to do it in ProRes. This is not possible because in ProRes you can only record internally to the camera in full HD. It says to me there are conflicting settings. If I press OK, it now has several yellow dots where it changed stuff. So it changed the ProRes, of course, the codec, the compression. It changed the bit depth, and it changed the resolution to full HD. If I go back in the control center, I can see now I have my profile number 1 activated. And when I press here, I can go through the different profiles I have set up. Moving on to white balance, I have set this now to auto as a good starting point for me. Most of the times when I'm shooting indoors, I set this to manual. Sometimes even when I'm shooting outdoors, I also set this to manual. But as a starting point, auto white balance is perfect for me. The IDR is turned off. The log settings, I have not messed around with those. I use the log settings that Leica provided their initial profile. Leica looks and video style are turned off because I am shooting in log. The moment I turn off log on the activated profile, Leica looks and video styles are activated, and we can of course apply them. I have not installed the Leica looks yet. If you want to use the Leica looks and if you want to know how to install them, I have made a dedicated video with the Q3 and the Leica FOTOS app where I show every step that you need to do to install the Leica looks on your camera. It works absolutely the same with the Leica SL3 as it works with the Q3. So check out that video. I will put a link in the comments. Now here I have turned on Cine mode. I already talked about Cine mode. If I turn off Cine mode, and I go back into the menu here, we can see now on the bottom that we have ISO 100 and we have the shutter speed of 1:250. And if I go back into Cine mode, this again activates the ASA and the shutter speed in degrees. Then I can decide if I want to give audio out with the HDMI. This only makes sense if you are showing a clip that you want to hear the audio. I have turned that off because when I'm monitoring some video in a studio, I don't want to have an audio feedback. So I have turned off audio function. Next are the audio settings. I have not touched them at all because I use an external microphone. We have timecode settings next. I have turned them on free run. And the start time is the camera time. When I go back here, you can see the time that is now 24 minutes past 3 o'clock. So this is the time and this is the time code that will be implemented into the file. I use the time of the camera because then I will never have the same time code on two different clips I shoot on the same day. They are easier to separate. Next is segmented video. I turned that off because I want to have one file. If you record, for example, a theater play of 2 hours, then it probably makes sense to activate this. So your whole 2 hours will be segmented in different little clips, like, I don't know, 5 to 7 minutes. And then if something happens with the camera, if the clip, one of the clips is corrupt, you don't lose the whole length of your recording. You only use this one segment. It's probably the more secure way to record longer tracks of video. Then we have color bars. You can choose between different color bars. I don't need that. We have the rec frame. I have activated that. It looks like this. Image stabilization I have turned on because most of the times I use the camera in my hand and then it's good to have it turned on. There are some situations where I turn it off. For example, when I'm working on a tripod or when I'm working on a gimbal, I would recommend to turn off image stabilization. I will talk about that a little bit later again. And we come into customize control. This is assignment of the buttons and the dials. I already talked about the buttons. I want to mention here that if you go into the menu here, you only enable or disable all the functions you could assign to a button. If you actually want to assign it to a button, you just press the button. I press here the FN button. Then all those enabled functions appear and I can choose one and assign it to the button I just pressed for a moment. With the dials, there are two different possibilities to assign the dials for autofocus lenses and manual focus lenses. I only have assignment for autofocus lenses. And as I showed you, I have on the left side, I have my ASA dial. On the right side, I have the aperture for both wheels, so I don't accidentally change the shutter speed. Then we have capture assistance. The capture assistance is the information you see in your EVF or in your LCD. What we can see here now is the upper menu. We can see the information on the bottom and we can see I have activated the scale and I have my frame lines. If I press now the function button, which is assigned to toggle the info levels, I have 4 different levels or profiles, and I have set them up in a way that every time I press it, it adds stuff. The first one is basically the cleanest. If I press it once, the side menu arrives with more information. Then when I press it again, I have the clipping and the focus peaking activated. And when I press it again, the grid also is activated. To set this up, you go into the menu Capture Assistance. There you have your 4 profiles. Each profile has a setting. If you go to the first setting, we can turn on and off different informations. I have the info bars here, for example. I have top, bottom, I have turned on. The right side I have turned off. In the second profile, this one turned on. And if you go into the fourth profile, I have basically everything turned on here. And also let me go into the frame lines menu. You can add frame lines that are preset from Leica 4:3, 5:3. 37:20 is basically 16:9. If you go to settings of custom frame lines, I have set it up to 30.80 to 50.40, which is basically 2:1. Then we have storage management. This is where you can format your CF Express card or your SD card, and you can change your file name. I have set it to L, that I know a file is recorded on my SL camera. It starts with an L. My Q3 I have set to a Q, and my M cameras I have set to M10 and M10M. So I always know where the file is coming from. Then we have the Leica FOTOS. I have performance mode. This is the mode that works fastest, but on video, I actually don't use the Leica FOTOS app that much, sometimes to remote control stuff, but actually in video, I don't need it. I of course have USB charging enabled because we are missing a charger in the SL3. So we have to connect a USB cable to charge the battery if we don't have an old charger or buy an extra charger. The USB mode I have set on select, so every time I put in the cable, it asks me what I want to do. This makes, I think, the most sense. Wi-Fi, this is just information. Then we come to the user profiles. I want to talk about them in the end. First, we're going to talk about camera settings, which actually I don't mess around with. And then there is camera information, where I want to show you one thing. And on the bottom, basically on the second side of the camera information menu, there is the copyright information. And I highly recommend to implement there your information. So in video, it doesn't do anything, but in photo, it makes total sense, because then the EXIF information of your photos, your name is implemented. We don't have content authentication in the SL3. But this is a way to at least write your name somewhere in the picture you have taken. And then the last point is the language. Now, let's talk about the user profiles. There are 6 different profiles you can set up, and there is the default profile from Leica. If I activate the default profile, it's basically factory resetting, but only the profiles. I have now, if we go to rename profiles, it's the easiest way to show you. I have my 6 profiles here. Those are the same profiles as for my photos. The way I set it up is that I did a basic photo setup and a basic video setup. I called it handheld because mostly I use my camera in my hand. And this is my starting point for all of my other profiles. I did save this profile in profile spot number 1. And then for the profile 2, which I call tripod, I just disabled the stabilization. And I had to disable it in the photo menu, and I have to disable it in the video menu. And now it's disabled for both. In the video mode, this is even more crucial, because when you go to a gimbal, for example, I also activate the tripod profile, the second profile. The profile number 3 is actually more a video profile, because when I use the SL3 to shoot videos here in the YouTube studio, I have lights here that are running on 5600 Kelvin. So I have set my white balance on 5600 Kelvin. So everything fits. Profile 4 and 5, again, are handheld and tripod/gimbal profiles. Those are more for night shoots, where I don't have the ISO on auto. I have the ISO on 4000. The 6th profile is basically the Leica M profile, which is an all manual profile. The video I did not touch at all. The number 6 is only a photo profile on my camera. So I hope I could inspire you to set up your camera. A lot of stuff, of course, works for the Leica SL2, for example, or the Q3 as well. Of course, the menu structure is a little bit different, and there are some functions those cameras don't have. If you have an SL3, maybe you set it up the same way. If you want to set up, for example, the dials the same way, I have a link in my description where I point you to my website where you can download a PDF file that shows you my setup for the wheels and the buttons. If you have not yet seen my video on how I set up my SL3 for photo, check it out here. If you want to see other Leica SL content, check that out here. Stay curious!